Now that we got our frame selected, let's go ahead and save this before something bad happens, because things always happen when you least expect it. So we'll call this marker removal. Okay. All right. So now what? Well, again, this is pretty simple. We're going to add a paint node to this. And we're just going to go to these frames and paint out the tracking markers. And we might as well get this little nubbit right there. Okay, now that everything has been painted, what we want to do now is render this out. We just want to render out these frames. Now, technically, we could just leave it as is, but with Copycat, the less you have the process, the better it is. So it's easier just to render these frames out and bring those frames back in. So we're going to go ahead and do that, in addition to rendering those exact same frames out for the non-painted versions. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that right now by doing a channels trick. I do this all the time, and it's used for many other things besides this, but it's really, really cool. Get a shuffle node. All right, the B channel here in your secondary, set that to RGBA, and get it a new channel and call it plate. Fill these things out automatically with that button, and then drag these over here. Now we need to do a time clip or frame clip, frame or frame range. Okay, so we want to put that at 101 to 101, and then an append clip. Now this is going to be a very important node here. All right, we want to make sure we go in order, and then we want to make sure their append clip starts at 101, which is at the very beginning of our comp over here. If you start your comps at frame 1, then just leave it, because by default it is 1. So if we come up here and set this to input, we should see our frames. Okay, so there's our painted frames as it goes through. All right. So now we want to go ahead and add another shuffle node to pull out our non-painted frames. Come up here, select plates. Look at that. There's our non-painted frames. All right, that saves you time. What you could have easily have done is copied this whole selection and then duplicated this and bring it over, and you would have got the same thing. But this reduces the amount of nodes. This technique reduces the amount of nodes, and so you only need just this little fella right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and write these things out. And we'll just go ahead and rent them out as EXRs as well. So this will be the painted frames. So let's go ahead and set up a folder and call it, we'll call it Copycat Frames. You can call it whatever you want. This painted clips. Percentage 04D.EXR. Okay, we'll make sure we're coming out the same color. ACCC. ACCC. Okay, so let's copy, paste this over here, and we'll call these clips. We got the painted clips and the regular clips all in the same folder. Okay, so this should show the non-painted. This should show the painted. All right, let's go ahead and render these out. Render selected. Input the 11 frames. Okay, now that we're done, before we move on to the next step, let's go ahead and bring in those footages or those files that we rendered. Here we are, painted clips. But we don't want it as an image sequence. We want them as individual clips. Okay, and there's a reason for that. So let's go ahead and bring those in. Okay, and let's go ahead and put these things in order. They all need to be in the same color space. I'm going to use a Nukipedia attribute copier. You select one, or you put one up here, select it, and then hit F1 or whatever keyboard command you want, and then you can change all of them at the same time. There we go. So, so our painted clip. So there's that looks like it's frame 11. Looks good. Painted frames look good. Okay, so let's go ahead and lay the non-painted frames out. So we got 11. All right, let's take a look at these, make sure they're good to go before we move on to the next step. Okay, all righty. So it appears that we got a good render here. All right, so if you notice, they are in order, and it's a very specific reason. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next step, and we'll start dealing with copycat.